Funding for this program is brought to you by Bismarck Big Boy. From pizza burgers flying style to fast and delicious fried chicken, Bismarck Big Boy has been a local legend since 1954.
I wasn't sure that I wanted to move back to Bismarck at that time, but I knew I needed to do something with my brain and, keep myself active. And my dad said, well, what do you think about coming into the family business? And he took me to a conference, an Anheuser-Busch conference, and I looked around and I thought, I don't know. There just at that time in the beer business, a lot of sexism. I'm a jock, what's this going to do? And then I thought, this might be kind of fun. This might be kind of cool. I can bring some things to the table here.
In 1947, Sam McQuade Sr. established what would become McQuade Distributing Company, a beer distributor serving central North Dakota. In 1976, Sam Sr. and his family founded the McQuade Softball Tournament, which is the largest charity softball event in the world, bringing around 400 teams and 15,000 fans to the capital city every June.
So my grandpa, Sam Sr., was in the military. He was a U.S. Marine. He fought in the Pacific side of the war. And he came back. His roots start in Minnesota, like Virginia, Minnesota area. There's actually a Lake McQuade, a McQuade Road that I have visited, and I think that's pretty cool. But that comes from my great-great-grandfather. It would be Sam Browning McQuade. He had an opportunity to come to the Bismarck area and start a business in 1947 with a partner. And they started selling Grain Belt beer. In 1955 is when August Bush, the second, I want to say, came through here. And Augie Bush came through here on what they called it the train tour. And he signed on many, many wholesalers in about that time frame in the mid-50s. And my grandfather and his partner were one of them. And then my grandfather went from the partnership to having his own business. And that's what started McQuade Distributing. My family history, starting here in Bismarck, just the memories of my grandpa, Sam McQuade Sr., and my grandma, Viola McQuade, kind of like full of piss and vinegar, to be perfectly honest. My grandma especially. If I can say that I got some of my personality from her, I'm very proud to say that. She was as tall as I am, 5'10" back then, kind of a robust woman. And the stories that I have of my sister and I going to their house and spending time when my parents would be out of town, I really enjoyed spending time with them. My grandpa would take us to school in the mornings, and he'd be listening to the old Reb on radio, and he sang a couple songs to us. I still have some of those songs. Sometimes it gets stuck in my head. I'm not telling you I have the right lyrics down, but just some of those memories. He was a smoker, so unfortunately we reeked like smoke at the end of a stay with them, but he'd kind of pop open that little side window that cars used to have and listen to the radio and sing along with us, and just was always kind of interested in what was going on in the school day for us. One of my funniest memories is my grandpa, back when Spuds McKenzie was a big deal in the mid to late 80s. I was in middle school, and my grandpa brought home some T-shirts of Spuds McKenzie in like a Hawaiian shirt. He was wearing a Hawaiian lei, and I was like, Grandpa, my friends would really like that T-shirt. So he brought me back about 13 T-shirts. I handed them off to my friends and teammates at the basketball team or whatever it was at the time, and the next day, the principal, actually it was a vice principal, got on the speaker and said, yeah, we can't be wearing those at school. I didn't even think anything of it. It's a cute little dog. And he kind of questioned that too, why we couldn't wear that. But One memory that might get me a little choked up is he at the later stages of his life, he really struggled with, circulation because of his smoking, and, he came to my, um he came to my senior year volleyball game at Bismarck High. We were playing Minot, and it was a big deal, and, he couldn't really get his leg hit. And after when I was warming up and I saw him coming through to sit down, and I said, "Grandpa, what on earth are you doing here? You shouldn't be here." And he just like, I wanna see you play." And that was really, really cool. That was really cool. And my grandma the same way, I'd ride bike from where we lived to where they lived in, the Ponderosa neighborhood of Bismarck when I was in, high school, and I'd go help her clean her house, and she'd, pay me some money to do that, as grandparents tend to do for their grandkids. Probably the best thing that anyone could ever say about my grandparents is how they took care of their son, Sean. My uncle Sean was about 10 years older than me, and, he has since passed, but, he was born with Down syndrome and a pretty high, level of Down syndrome, not very high functioning.
When I came into the business, he had just left a school that he had been attending in Minnesota, and then he was trying some other jobs out, and then finally Sam said, "Well, let's have him work in the recycle center." And so that's where he worked. But Sean was like any normal man. He liked girls, and so he have crushes on girls, and apparently he had one on me, because I heard that he would say, "Kathy, Kathy, Kathy." So one day, it must have been after lunch, I was in my office, and he was kind of standing around, and I must have just put lipstick on, and he came up to me and he snuck a kiss. And he kissed me on my lips, but food and taste means a lot to Sean, and he did not like the taste of that lipstick, and he went like that, and he never kissed me again.
They took care of him, and they were proud of him, and that was in a day and age where, they'd ship the kids off and, maybe never see him again, and, they really took care of him. They did bring him to a special school in Wisconsin, which he loved. They went and visited him. They picked him up. He came back home, when he wasn't in school. He will tell you stories after stories after stories of St. Coletta School in Wisconsin. As a younger kid growing up, he felt more like a cousin to me than an uncle, but my Uncle Sean is what the McQuade family was pretty much most proud of. My dad got into the business because of a family tragedy. And, he was not going to go into the family business. He was the oldest of 7 siblings. And my grandpa had my uncle Gerard kind of pegged, to take over for him. Gerard was kind of wild and had kind of like a great beer personality, I guess, as we still like to call it. A good people person, maybe not the greatest of business people back then. But, unfortunately, he was killed in a car accident, hit head on, along with another, employee of a beer distributor in Dickinson, and, injured 2 of our employees. They were on their way to a beer convention in Montana. And, my dad got the call. It was the second call he'd received about a brother's death because his brother, Steve, had, died a couple years before that in another car accident. And, he was living in Colorado with my mom at the time. He was working for Xerox, selling, now he'd be out of a job. He was selling copy machines or fax machines. That was facsimiles was gonna be the next big thing. So he got that call, and, he thought about it sometime, and he and my grandpa butted heads, as, parents and their kids will do. But, he negotiated a better salary for himself. My mom was not thrilled. She said, "Son, if we get married and we move to the United States, we're not going to live in Bismarck. It's too damn cold." So, she agreed, Colorado being, geographically a little bit warmer, but she agreed, and they came back here. They moved here in, '76, but my dad really was the business piece of it. He really turned this business around. I don't know that it would have been here if it weren't for my dad's business acumen, kind of that tough guy role, and, but also being a good people person.
Help tell the stories of Bismarck's past and become a financial sponsor of this program. Contact info@bismarckhistory.org to learn more.
Well, I started in 1984, and by then Sam was in charge of the company. And what he saw, I could tell when he came into the company, was to modernize it. When I started, there were 3 companies. It was McQuade Distributing and McQuade Transport. He had made a company for long-haul truckers to, bring the beer in instead of hiring outside people. And then, of course, the Recycle Center, and he had built that building in 1983. I think it's hard for all employees to transition to a different management style. And I heard it when I started. People, that knew Sam Sr. didn't really like how Sam Jr. did things. And I think it took us a while to get used to Shannon too. But they were all excellent, excellent managers of that company. They hired good people. And they knew kind of, when to step in, when to step out. Sam Sr. had brought it up to where it was very successfully, but it was time to modernize. And he had already built a new warehouse by the time I came there. They had one of the first computers in North Dakota for beer wholesalers. Beer wholesalers were not really quick to adapt to technology, and he was one of the first to do that.
He was a tough cookie. He's a type A personality, really, really smart, very well educated, self-educated, reads lots of books. I couldn't use words in sentences that were incorrect. He would constantly correct me. He was tough. He was very much a perfectionist in his own mind, and then he expected that of others. But at the same time, one thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is he really was he's a very sentimental sap, heart of gold. And, that was one thing that it took me over the years of being his daughter, playing sports. He expected a lot out of me, and I kind of didn't always appreciate that. But looking back, I mean, he got the best out of me. And my mom, she passed away a little over a year ago. She had brain cancer, and she was literally the glue that held all of us together. She loved my kids with everything she had. She loved us with everything she had, my sister and me. And she's from France, so she had this really sweet French accent. Moved here when she was 21 after she married my dad. And when she passed away or when she was sick, I mean, there was people who came out of the woodwork that I didn't even know knew your mom and had a great story about her because she was a bucket filler, I guess is the best way I could explain it. She was someone who literally lit up the room when she walked in. She had this beautiful smile, and that's truly who I would like to say one day I emulated is, I wanted people to feel good about themselves. She wanted people to feel good about themselves, and, in her French accent, it just made it sound that much nicer. So my dad took this business into his hands, and he grew it. He grew it in staff, changed warehouses since then twice. We've been in this building since 96, 97 we moved in. He had multiple brands. He tried to become a Anheuser-Busch exclusive wholesaler back in the late 90s, early 2000s. That was very important for him to be able to potentially grow as a wholesaler, maybe buy some other wholesalerships. That did not come to fruition, but that's why I came into the business. Is at one time we thought maybe we had the potential to grow the business, buy another distributorship, and I had twin daughters. I was losing my mind. I wanted to work. I went to school for sports broadcasting, and the work wasn't plentiful. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to move back to Bismarck at that time, but I knew I needed to do something with my brain and, keep myself active. And my dad said, well, what do you think about coming into the family business? And he took me to a conference, an Anheuser-Busch conference, and I looked around and I thought, I don't know. There just at that time in the beer business, a lot of sexism. I'm a jock, what's this going to do? And then I thought, this might be kind of fun. This might be kind of cool. I can bring some things to the table here.
She came onto the scene in the year 2000. And Sam made her go through all the steps, out in delivery and warehouse. And to tell you the truth, I think the office is her least favorite. All of them are visionaries. They see the big picture, and it's up to her and them to hire good employees to do all the detail work. And I'm a detail person, so she's kind of like me because I would do that for her.
My best delivery story, I was delivering at the old Interstate Liquor in Bismarck, which is up on the north end of town, and it had very narrow pathways to get the beer. We'd bring the beer down off the truck in the back alley, and I'm tall and I'm strong, but I'm not as strong as the guys I was working with. And I was waiting with what we call 18 packs of beer, and we stack them about 20, 22 high, kind of rotating them counter. So it's a block of beer on my what we call a wheeler, a two-hand truck. And standing in front of me is my coworker, Todd York. And he's standing there just talking. We're waiting to get into the cooler, and I'm trying to back up this 20 packs. And the next thing I know, it falls in front of him. It's the wheeler snaps back and hits me in the tooth. And I kind of look at him shocked, and he looks at me shocked. And I said, "Are you okay?" And then I spit out my tooth in whole. My tooth came out whole, like didn't crack, didn't break. The whole root. Teeth are big. I didn't realize that. Yeah, this tooth came out, and he just looked at me like stunned. We stacked the beer back up. I put it in my pocket. I went and looked at myself at the Interstate Liquor. It's, men run. So it was a gross smelling bathroom with a mirror about this big. And I looked at myself. I went, oh my gosh, I look like a hockey player. Just, tooth and blood. And so that's my claim to fame. That's my story, is I stuck the tooth back in my pocket, kept working that day.
I got to go to some conventions and seminars too, and you're absolutely right, it's male dominated. But Shannon's a strong person, and I don't think she let that bother her at all. I think she was proud of it. And I think she succeeded because of it, because she was going to prove herself.
Our family has always been philanthropic, and it's started with my grandparents for sure. And I think that stemmed from my Uncle Sean and just my grandparents wanting to see other kids like him, grow up in a better atmosphere, better place with better options. And so that's really the basis and how the McQuade softball tournament was started back in 1976. My grandpa started it. I think back then it was like a Jerry, MS, that kind of fundraiser that he added on to through Olympia Beer. And he started it in 76. He thought, well, why don't we throw this softball tournament? We'll raise money for these kids and we'll call it good. It started with 103 teams, which at that time, today's age, that would be a lot. But back then, that was a whole heck of a lot. So it was an Olympia Beer tournament. Started with 103 teams to raise money for Jerry's kids, for MS. It kind of grew the next year, kept growing. Then it became the McQuade softball tournament, and it became more charities, more people involved. Just before my grandpa died in 92, some of the people around the softball tournament said, "Stan, you can't do this by yourself. How long are we going to have you? You can't do this by yourself." So just before that, they formed a board of directors, and kind of everybody had their piece: umpires, teams, the softball rules, and my dad was on it just as part of the family to maintain that. And so when I came into the company, I went on that board, and that's really how I learned about. I as a kid, being Shannon McQuade at the Sam McQuade Senior Budweiser Charity Softball Tournament, I felt like an absolute rock star. It was the coolest thing. My grandpa come out and my grandma with her Budweiser shirts. I'm pretty sure she made those out of like the Budweiser labels. The cowboy hat. To this day, I still wear some sort of cowboy hat to honor my grandpa on the last day during the ceremony.
I do think the McQuade family had a big impact on Bismarck and the community. And it started, I think, with the softball tournament. And Sam Sr. was very well known in the community. I think he was on boards too. And then the softball tournament. And then Shannon is very involved in the community. She's very philanthropic. She's very into running charity fundraisers, and she's on boards. And I think, before I started here, I knew about the McQuades. I mean, just because.
If I had a time machine and had to go back and bring my grandma and grandpa back here, and to be honest with you, even my dad, because he's not involved in the company as much anymore, but he still asks me a lot of questions. My grandparents would be shocked by how the warehouse is laid out, how clean it is. I think my grandpa would definitely acknowledge how well my dad has done in business. I mean, the company has grown exponentially. The space has grown exponentially. But I think just the way that things get advertised, the way that things get marketed, the salesmanship and the route, how we go to deliver, that's pretty much the same. But, how we load the trucks and how many people we have here. The communities we serve, we are loyal to our customers. We hope that they're loyal to us.
Help tell the stories of Bismarck's past and become a financial sponsor of this program. Contact info@bismarckhistory.org to learn more.